أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد المرسلين. Let me greet you with the Islamic greeting of Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. And that is to our brothers and sisters in Islam and the brothers and sisters in humanity. The topic for tonight is women's rights in Islam. You're not hearing me? Not very clear. It's funny on. Now it's okay. Magic switch there, isn't it? Okay. Now if you go straight to the first slide. For most of humanity there are now two world views. Keep going. The Western liberal view, where the idea is based on culture and civilization and one's ideas. The Islamic worldview, which is revelation given by Allah. I will use Allah for God, but whenever we say God, we're talking about Allah as far as I'm concerned. A book written at the end of time by Francis Fukuyama, quite recently, he concluded human development in terms of his ideas has concluded with this final period of liberal secular thought, and nothing more will come to humanity. End of evolution, perhaps. He adds the only part of the world which has not adopted this secular humanist view is the Islamic world, and proposes that there will be an ideological split within the Islamic world. Moving on. Both believe their view is best for humanity. Now, one of the topics of contention between these two views, next slide. There's a secular liberal humanist view in the West, and the Islamic tradition is women. What is the position of women? What is their status? How are they perceived? Are women elevated in one culture and oppressed in the other? The Western view, women are elevated. They're gaining more rights with the passage of time. They say their Islamic sisters are being oppressed. The Muslims say the Islamic system provides true freedom for men and women. We submit only to Allah, only to God. And to understand the Islamic viewpoint, one needs to look at the theological implications. Now, the women in the Western tradition, basically it's inherited from the Greeks, pre-Christian. Aristotle argued women are not full human beings. Their position in society was no better than slaves or animals, except for a few elite. It continued into early Christian writings. St. Thomas, for instance, of Aquino, he was one that wrote about women, and also Jerome. And this continued until the Protestant Reformation brought freedom from the shackles of the Catholic Church. The Age of Enlightenment caused them to feel they needed to be free of these ideas. For example, scientific reasoning, that the earth goes round the sun rather than the sun going round the earth. Theological, Martin Luther's writings. And then the social or societal, the position of women in society. And yet, women are still not considered full human beings at this time in the Western thinking. French writers during the French Revolution, for example, Rousseau and Voltaire and others, saw women as a burden that needed to be taken care of. Rousseau in Emily, I think, proposes a different education for women to that of men, as women are unable to understand what men are able to understand. This is the Western thinking. In the 1800s, moving on, writings calling for change. First feminist movements come up, and the tradition of women receiving certain rights begins. Starts with legal rights, equal pay from the Industrial Revolution, and after World War II, the emancipation of women. In the 1800s, Mary Wollstonecraft wrote Vindication for the Rights of Women. But these laws for these changes were only passed in the UK and the US in the 1880s and thereafter. As you know, the suffragette movement at the beginning of the 1900s, when women got the vote, and so on and so forth. And then they contended that many problems were caused by the institution of marriage, the ideas of marriage and so forth. And today we have more couples living together unmarried than married. Why? Apparently because they don't want to share property in the case of a divorce. Now, we're coming to the 1990s, where the prevalent argument in the West is to discuss gender, not sex. Biology doesn't come into it. There's no difference between the male or the female except for gender due to the environment. They can reverse the roles by changing education and climate. So in 2,500 years, women have been denied full humanity, so there being no difference between the sexes. Gender is a function of climate and environment. If we could change the environment, men would take on the role of women, and women would take on the role of men. This is what gender is. And yet we still don't have equal rights for women. We still don't have in this country equal pay and equal opportunities for women. Now let's look at the Islamic thing. It's not from man. It's by divine revelation through Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessing be upon him, who was granted the wisdom to interpret and understand that revelation. It's a code that we live by. It's an expression of our belief. The way we live our lives is an expression of our belief. Men and women share a single humanity. There's no difference in that amount of human nature. For example, in the Quran 14:9-13, we find that we have been created from a single male and a single female on equal levels. And in 4:1, O humanity, we have created you from a single soul. So there's no question in Islam as to whether the woman had a soul or not, or whether she would go to paradise or not if she died, or what was her function on earth. All of these things are clearly understood in Islam from 1400, 1500 years ago. Not something that has evolved over time. We're told women are the twin halves of men. When a man marries, he completes the other half of his religion. And we're told that Allah has not created for play or in jest. He has created mankind and spirits, jinn, to worship him. So our function on earth is to worship him. And if men and women worship him, then the reward would be the same for either one of them. Paradise. If we live up to what we say. But around the year 510 CE, there was a meeting of the bishops in France to discuss whether women possess souls or not. If they did possess souls, what would be their role on earth? Was it to worship God? They finally came to the conclusion that yes, it was. Women do have souls, which was a break from the previous tradition. But they also said their purpose was not just to worship God, but to serve men. This is what the bishops in 510 said, or around about 510. This is what they said. This was the understanding of women. In Islam, men and women together worship God, and both are serving God. Submit to God. Not to each other, to God. But that's not what the bishop said in 520. The Islamic view is based on three things: share the same humanity, have the same objective on earth, expect the same reward.